What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Own Her Power podcast, brought to you by Leadership Athletics. This is my next Power Play episode. I've heard from a few of you, and I'm so grateful and thankful that you guys are following me and listening in to these Power Play episodes. They are something that I believe are instrumental to how our athletes can succeed in life, not only today, but every day. And so on today's episode, we are going to talk about the 3 ways to overcome fear of failure. And so I know that fear of failure is huge for a lot of you as athletes. And so I want to provide you with some sort of plan for how you can start to overcome that fear. All right. So step number 1, let's just get right into it. Step number 1. So when we grow up, our parents, our coaches, right, maybe even some of our other teammates want to put us in this bubble so that we never experience fear, right? We have this idea that there should be no fear. And so when we think about no fear in that context, we're kind of setting ourselves up really to fail. And so what I want to teach you in step number 1 is not to N-O fear, but to K-N-O-W fear, which means to know fear, right? To understand that it exists, that it is a part of your process, and that until you recognize that process or that part of your process, you will not be able to succeed in the way that you need to be able to succeed. So when I train my athletes, I usually show them this video, and I want you guys to find it on YouTube. It is with Will Smith. And it talks about the idea of fear. And so he goes skydiving with his son. And he basically talked about how, like, the night before, the family and everybody was joking about, let's go skydiving tomorrow. We're here in Dubai, and let's go skydiving. And in the reality of the situation, in that moment, they were all game for it. They may have had a little liquid courage in this process, but they all decided basically to go skydiving. And so everything was all good until they get to the actual skydiving preparation before the flight. And all of a sudden it hit them that, oh my gosh, like I'm about to jump out of a plane at 30,000 feet in the air. And so it's just a good video, and I love what it talks about. And I want you guys, if you can, to go to YouTube and just type in Will Smith and no fear, or just fear, and you will find that video. So we consider fear, there's 2 things I've heard growing up. One, fear being false evidence is appearing real, meaning that we're putting these stipulations or boundaries on something that creates this fear that sometimes is not actually fear. So that's one way to think about it. And then there's another way to think about it in the mindset world. My friend Colin Henderson coined this, fear being oh gosh, let me think about it real quick. It is a physical response to a mental threat, right? So a physical response to a mental threat. And I think that for athletes is more of a better definition for you. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to first recognize that fear exists. That is step 1, knowing that if I know that it exists, I can't be blindsided by the idea that it exists. Right? So the second step that's going to help you overcome fear is to next recognize some of the triggers that cause your fear to happen. So with all my athletes, when we work together, the very first thing that I have them do is start to record, number 1, the triggers that happen when they have a moment in the game where they don't feel at their best. And the second thing I want them to do is then write it down, right? So recognize what those triggers are, and then what are the things that I'm saying to myself when those triggers happen. Not only can we overcome fear, we have to recognize it and then be able to talk through what those things actually mean. So my second piece of advice to you is to write down the triggers and the things that you are saying to yourself, and let's talk about them in a way to determine if they are real, okay, if they are actual facts, or if we're just kind of making these things up in the moment, right? And the third step to overcoming fear of failure, it's a 3-part step. You can use any one of these tools or all 3 of these tools to help you overcome your fear. So step number 1 is that you should have some sort of a verbal cue as a reset. Okay, so our reset plan will come with 3 steps, one being a verbal, one being a physical, and one being a visual. So let's start with the verbal. So verbal cues are sort of like affirmations or confirmations that you can do the hard things, that you have maybe been here before and can get over it. Maybe you have prepared for this situation. And sometimes when you're in the moment, you don't believe that you have prepared for it. So something that you can say to yourself are one of those 3 things. Basically, I am prepared for this, right? I have worked hard for this moment. I can overcome this thought and move into something more positive. So I am good enough, right? So if you can think of something to say to yourself as an affirmation, that's really going to set you up in order for you to overcome that fear in the moment. And I want to just stop for a second and say this. The goal of overcoming fear is not necessarily to eliminate fear, but it's to number 1, recognize the fear. Number 2, be where your feet are, which is in the present moment, and to just simply be present. So that is the goal. So when we're doing these tips and tricks, that's what you're trying to get back to. Okay. So step number 2 of our reset plan is a physical routine. And so when I have some sort of physical routine, it gives me an opportunity to reset, refocus. Okay. So with my physical routine, I know a couple of athletes. I specifically work with softball players. So I'm going to give you a couple of softball analogies here. So one of my players will pull the string on her glove. And what that does is basically allows her to recognize, okay, I recognize that I had this thought. I'm going to pull my string that helps me get back to my present moment, to be back where my feet are, and to think about the next pitch or the next play. Another one of my athletes, basically what she does as an infielder, she will grab a piece of, or some dirt basically, and she will let the dirt go, which is kind of like a release. And then she'll wipe her pants with her hand. And what she does with that is she's basically wiping off and refocusing on this present moment. Okay, so I want to challenge you to find something that you can do physically that can help you get over that sort of moment. Okay, another one, I'm gonna give you one more because I think it's important when it comes to hitting. If you wear batting gloves, one of my athletes will basically undo the Velcro from their batting glove, which is like a release, right? And then they basically will take a deep breath and it will then close their batting glove back up. So when we do that, we're basically refocusing the moment, getting back in the box and getting ready to smash the next pitch, right? And my last advice when it comes to the reset plan is a visual. So a lot of people miss this one, but I think it's really important to have this. We don't want it to be a moving object. We don't want it to be a person, but we want you to find something somewhere in the field that when you have a negative thought or a fear of failure, that you take a moment and you look at that point, that spot in the field, on the field, in the dirt, wherever it is, find that point and just take a deep breath that allows you to recognize that I'm back at this moment. I'm back in this game and let's get after it. Okay. So again, the 3 steps in order to help you overcome your fear of failure is to first recognize that it exists. Okay. Is to secondly, write down what are the triggers and what am I saying to myself? Also, are these things real or are they just things that I'm making up in the moment? And the third thing is to practice one of your reset routines. All right. Reset routines being one verbal, one physical, or one verbal, one physical, and oh my gosh, I'm losing drawing a blank here. One verbal, one physical, and one visual. All right. Anyways, thanks so much for listening today. We're down in Clearwater getting ready to compete in our last game of the day of the tournament. So again, thanks so much you all for joining me. I also want to just shout out real quick all of those who have signed up for my her mentoring program. It is my Leadership Athletics Mentoring Academy. It's for open to ages 13 and up. We're going to meet bi-weekly, bi-monthly, excuse me, where we talk about just different things. We'll have different guests on. It'll just be a community of athletes who are wanting to be better and build themselves up in a way that they are successful, not only on the field and off the field. So remember, you are unique, you are valuable, and you are enough. All right. Have an awesome day, everybody. We'll see you next time. All right. Peace.